Alright, what up guys? It's me, and welcome to a slightly different video. So, as you guys probably know, between just different things I've said in different videos, as a vacation this year, I took a trip to Europe. And real quick, before we get started, I just want to touch on... Excuse me, I have the hiccups. I just want to touch a little bit on why I'm doing this way. So, as you guys know, I travel a lot. For example, I leave in a couple days to go out to Colorado for a week. I was in North Carolina in June. In December, I'll be in Florida. Things like that. So, I travel a lot, and in the past, the way I've done sort of travel vlogs, if you will, because I feel awkward just walking around with the camera in my hand talking in public. Like, that's just an awkward thing to me, and a lot of the vacations I go on are family vacations where I'm going with my mom or my dad. You know, this one was with my dad. I go on vacations with my mom as well. Like, a lot of times, they don't want to be on camera either, and it just feels really awkward to me to do the whole, like, travel vlogging thing. Not to say that I won't at some point in my life do that, but for the time being, with the people I travel with, it feels really, really awkward. And as a result, I don't necessarily post travel vlogs, but what I'll do is I will take specific things I do on these vacations and make 30 to 60 second TikToks of them. But because I also post them to YouTube Shorts, they can't be more than 60 seconds long. And what I was realizing is I just generally am now not as much of a fan of that specific type of thing. So I'm not a huge fan of sitting there and trying to, like, cram a bunch of details about something I'll touch on later in this video, but, like, the Roman Colosseum. I'd have to cram it all into 60 seconds if I wanted to make one TikTok on it. And just generally, it becomes not as much fun to edit, and it gets incredibly rushed to try and run through. I'm talking at, like, 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's not natural. And for this trip, because Europe is such an amazing place, I didn't feel like it would do justice to the time that I had. So, as a result, we now have this. And I'm trying out this format with the Europe trip, and if it works well with the Europe trip, then it will become a thing. And if it doesn't work well, then it won't become a thing. So this is literally just essentially a PowerPoint presentation with a bunch of photos from my trip, but what I thought this would give me the chance to do over the TikTok format is it would give me a chance to really explain some things, talk about what I saw. And if this doesn't work, then I won't do it, but I thought this would do more justice to the beauty that is Europe and the cities that we saw than TikTok. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, actually, one more thing on that. The other thing is I can take clips from this and post them over to TikTok if I want. So it sort of lets me do best of both worlds and not feel like I'm cheating this amazing location. So, my Europe trip consisted of 8 days abroad, and we hit 4 cities in those 8 days. We hit Vienna, Venice, Florence, and Rome in that order. So that's going to be the order that I go through this video talking about these. So to start, we have Vienna at city number 1. Now, just an important note about Vienna. First of all, that's where this water bottle came from. Amazing thing about Europe, the lids don't detach, so you never have to worry about losing it. A lot of people I know that live in America and go to Europe hate that. I hated it at first, but then I started to like it when I realized I didn't have to, like, put the cap in my pocket or hold it in a separate hand. Like, it was just there. But anyway, Vienna, we flew in and out of Vienna. So we did 1 day in Vienna at the beginning of the trip, and the second day to sort of end off the trip. With Italy in between, essentially. So, the first day, we saw a lot of cathedrals and palaces. Just a note, there's not a good place for my camera to go, so it's going to be in the way of some things, but I can always move it. But as you guys can see, there are a lot of cathedrals and palaces, and, like, this is just the architecture of the city. Like, Europe, this was the thing that struck me about Vienna from, like, the first hour I got there, is, you know, in an American city, first of all, America's relatively young compared to a lot of the cities we went to, so there's a lot less history. But in American cities, you don't just walk a block and pass, like, 4 gorgeous cathedrals and churches and, like, 2 or 3 palaces. That's a thing in Vienna and in Europe, is there was so much to do. So we hit the Vienna Opera House. We hit I want to say it's St. Michael's Cathedral. We hit a lot of cathedrals. We hit a Hofburg Palace. We hit the Belvedere Palace. There are more palaces we hit that I'll talk about on later slides for Vienna. But just the thing here was, and the advice I'll give to anyone going to Europe, is if you, like, when you're walking around these cities, if you see a church, just go inside. You don't have to spend very long in there. You don't have to attend a mass. It's worth seeing. And a lot of these cathedrals and just palaces are gorgeous on the outside, but also on the inside. It was shocking. So, there were even more cathedrals that we saw here in Vienna. This one was one of, like, my favorite cathedrals that we went into. There's one photo in there that's just, it's this one, that's just a statue, but the rest of these are all from this cathedral. I want to say it's St. Peter's. I could be wrong. The location info is in Austrian German, so I looked at the location info and found it was a little bit hard to, you know, translate back again, but just the artwork in these places. Now, Vienna was very much like a Baroque style of, like, church and cathedral, which is very over the top, but it leads to a lot of just gorgeous, gorgeous art. So I really enjoyed that. Moving on, this was the biggest palace in Vienna, at least to the best of my knowledge, which is the Schloss Schroburn, I think, or the Schroburn Palace. But just, this place was massive. Like, you guys can see it in the one on the top there. It's massive. It took us 5 minutes, at least, to walk to this point, and I thought it was a much sharper photo when I put it in. But, like, just, there's the Neptune Fountain. They have a monument up here to Maria Theresa. There are some gorgeous, gorgeous walkways like this one. And then the one that my webcam is covering is just a photo of the inside. But yeah, like, this place was breathtaking. It was like 50 euros total for tickets to get into the palace, and it is definitely worth seeing. If nothing else, you can walk the grounds for free, and the grounds are absolutely breathtaking. This was an absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing palace. Like, I would definitely go there again just to walk around if I was, going with someone who had never been and was giving a tour around Vienna. Like, this is one of the must-dos. There we go. So, we also walked around Vienna at night. This was our first night in Vienna. They didn't have City Hall all lit up like they normally do. They didn't have City Hall all lit up like they normally do, but our first night, we went and walked around. We saw the Hofburg Palace at night. The Opera House is all lit up like that. It literally looks like something out of, a painting. I had to do a double take when I walked past it because, honestly, I didn't think it was real. It was gorgeous, and the photos do not do it justice. We also went by City Hall. Our first night, it was a showing of a concert, so we got to walk through that little festival area. And the second night, which, mind you, was our last night in Europe, it was a watch party of the Euro semifinals for football, whereas Americans, here in America we call it soccer, but over there, very much football, so I started referring to it as football. Don't worry, now that I'm back in the States, I refer to it as soccer, but when in Rome. But, I mean, Vienna is absolutely stunning at night. You guys can see just how some of the buildings are lit up. And, I mean, I'm pretty sure that was one of those photos. It's the State Capitol building. This one is the Hofburg Palace, which, again, the photo just does not do this justice. Like, that is, you guys will see, that is the case with a lot of photos from this trip. Is just, the photos do not do these places justice. The photo in the top left is a statue of Mozart because, as I'll get to in a couple minutes, Vienna is, like, very, very music central. It's where Mozart, Beethoven, like, a lot of your big classical musicians came from Vienna. This was on our second day. We really just walked a lot around Vienna. I was slightly under the weather at this point because I picked something up along the way in Italy. But we went into their public library, which this photo right here is the ceiling of said public library. This is the back of City Hall. The front of City Hall. Front and back look very, very different. Then that's the Berg Theater. And then this photo right here was also another photo of the inside of their public library. Then we walked over to, like, the river, found a nice spot to grab snack, drink, and yeah, and then we also walked into another church, which you guys can see in sort of the bottom left middle there. And then the bottom right was this park we walked through. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it was absolutely gorgeous. one of the things we wanted to do on our last night was the Vienna Symphony. So, as I've previously mentioned, Vienna is very, very big in music. Music is a big part of Vienna. So this was inside the Habsburg Palace, which is why we went to this one. We couldn't get tickets in advance to the Opera House, and we also didn't bring the right clothes for the dress code for the Opera House. But this symphony was awesome. I tried to include a couple videos, but Canva just wouldn't let me. But because it was a symphony and not like the Opera House, and because it was also a smaller one inside Habsburg Palace, there are some comedy skits in there too during the music. Like at one point there was a whistle, the guy kept getting it wrong and he gave him a red card. It was really impressive and a really, really good way to sort of end off our trip. I would highly recommend this if you go to Vienna. Just go to a symphony, an opera. Like, again, Vienna is known for music, so definitely take advantage of that. And then wrapping up Vienna, here was some of the food we had. We realized about halfway through the trip that we needed to take pictures of the food because food in Europe is amazing. The tacos in the middle were tacos that we had at like this local hole-in-the-wall shop. The two things on the side of it, the one on the right was some kind of, I believe, duck dish, I think I'm remembering that correct. And then the one on the left was what I got, and it was deer schnitzel with mashed potatoes. Which, those two were exceptional. It was like a place where we had to search to find it. GPS took us to the general building, but you had to go like down 2 flights of stairs, down this really sketchy looking hallway. And you got there, and it was like a 4.9 stars and was only open for 2 hours every day. It was absolutely amazing. So moving on from Vienna, excluding the last day, we took a train ride through the mountains to Graz. A lot of those photos look exactly the same, and again, the photos don't do the views justice, so I didn't include that, and then we were in Graz for about 2 hours, and I had a total of about 3 photos. We did a really cool, we found this hill in Graz that went over, it looked over the city, so there were some really gorgeous views there. And we had lunch there and then did a slide down a mountain. But because it wasn't really a necessarily stop on our journey, it was more of a layover, essentially. I didn't include it, but if you guys would like, I can put a link in the description or in the comments to some of those photos. But from Graz, we took a train into Venice. It was about 8 hours total. 8 or 9 hours total on the train. Took a nap for some of it. Played on my phone for a lot of it. Got to learn a little bit of Italian on the way. But coming in at Venice, we had 1 night and part of a day here. And I would say, from my experience doing Venice, that is all you need. You could maybe add in 1 more night and maybe a half a day. Because we saw a lot of the sites, but the one thing we didn't do was like go into a lot of the churches or cathedrals. So you add in another day to do that, and you've done all of Venice. As far as European cities go, it's small. But we got in right around sunset, and we got to experience Venice at night. So the photo in the top center is was the canal. It was one of the canals, not the Grand Canal. That's the bottom center. But we went to the little local street area in Venice for food. Again, highly, highly recommend, because it was genuinely amazing. The food was really good at this place. Food in Venice is mediocre. But then we stopped over to St. Mark's Square. There was a concert going on, so that's what the bottom left photo is. And then the other photos are just photo of the square at night. So that was basically all the sightseeing we did for Venice at night. Grand Canal photos off of the Rialto Bridge, or Ponte Rialto, I believe, is how that translates over to Italian. But overall, Venice is gorgeous at night. So a lot of what we did the following day was a lot of glass blowing. So there's an island, it's a boat ride. It's a fairly short boat ride away from Venezia, which is Venice in Italian. I believe it was like Murano or Milano or something like that. I want to say Murano. But it's essentially the island of glass blowing. There is nothing else on this island but glass blowing. So there's a lot of works there. They have some glass blowing tours. I didn't include a souvenirs part, but I have some glasses downstairs in my cabinet now that my dad got for when we move, that were handmade in Italy. Got some gifts that were also like handmade blown glass. Watching the glass blowing is really cool. I've always loved that, so this was like right up my alley. And then we went back to the main island and did some more sightseeing. So I don't know why a lot of these photos are blurrier than I expected. I wish they weren't, but you guys can get the point. We saw one of the big churches in St. Marco's Square. San Marco is St. Mark's in Italian, I believe. The picture in the top right where my webcam is just looking off of one of the bridges in Venice that our hotel was nearby. We took that photo like right before we went to the train station. We got to see the clock tower. The thing about Venice is there's no cars because it's, entirely on the water. There's no cars. So there are a lot of canals like you see in one of the photos there. There's also a whole nother island with a massive church on it, which is that like center left photo. And then bottom left is a church we walked past. We didn't get a chance to go into. And then top left is, I can't remember what it is, but it's a really gorgeous piece of Venetian architecture. So before we move out of Venice, I looked. We didn't take a lot of photos in Venice of our food. The biggest piece of advice I would give for Venice is get a hotel near the train station, because there are a lot of bridges and steps in Venice. Because bridges sometimes don't have steps, they're just arches. No, these have steps. So you want to make sure you know where you're staying based off of where you're coming in. Someone gave us that advice, and it probably saved us a good 30 minutes of trying to lug all of our luggage just across Venice. So definitely book a hotel close to where you're coming in. You don't want to have to carry your, big suitcases, because for Europe, you always take big suitcases with lots of stuff and lots of room for souvenirs. You don't want to drag that across a lot of bridges and up and down a lot of steps. We saw a lot of people doing it. It looked really unpleasant, and I'm really glad we didn't have to. So from Venice, we took about we took a train at around 1700 hours or so 5 p.m. And yeah, we took a train into Florence, which is city number 3. This is probably my favorite city out of all the ones we hit. I had a lot of really, really good experiences here. I met a lot of people that I still keep in touch with. And overall, it was an amazing city. If I could go back to anywhere in Italy, it would be Florence, and I'm honestly debating doing a study abroad there. The reason I say study abroad there is because once you're in Europe, for the Americans that have never been to Europe like I had until this, once you get into Europe and get through customs to wherever you fly into, you just go between countries like you do states here in the US. Like, we went between Italy and Austria, and we never had to, like, check passports or anything. It's just, you take a train through one country into another. It's just like crossing the border between states here. But Florence was amazing, and it's a 2-hour train ride from Venice, 2-hour train ride from Rome. It's like an hour-and-a-half train ride to Pisa. Like, if I did a study abroad there, I could go to a lot of these places for, like, a weekend if I wanted to. So we got there in the evening, and we went and did a lot of sightseeing. There was a concert that was going on. We went and saw Palazzo Vecchio, not Ponte Vecchio. I'll get to that in a second. And then we saw this neat little shopping area, which just... Florence is gorgeous, both daytime and nighttime. The following morning, so that night, we had a really nice dinner, and then went to a local hole-in-the-wall bar and watched soccer. But I didn't feel the need to include that, because in the end, a bar looks like a bar. There was nothing incredibly special about it. It was just for the experience of watching a soccer match in Europe. That is something, if you're over there and there's soccer on, do it. But these were some of the views we got of Ponte Vecchio from some of the other bridges. For those who don't know, Ponte Vecchio is one of the biggest... Well, it's essentially a shopping bridge, but it's a bridge, so you have views of the city from either side, and it's amazing. It's actually one of the spots the Tour de France went through this year because of the Olympics. The next thing we did was Boboli Gardens, which is at... it's at one of the palaces. I can't remember the name. But... these gardens were amazing. As you can see down there in, like, the center left on the bottom, there were some amazing views of the city that we were able to get, and just the sculptures and the architecture here is incredible. I'm not going to go through and, like, explain every single photo, just because I don't remember a lot of the context for them, but just the architecture and the sculptures here were amazing. Here's some more photos. As you can see, some amazing views and some just amazing sculptures. The gardens were just overall incredible. And then here's even more. That house on the top is the lemon house. It is a house specifically dedicated to keeping lemon plants in for the winter, and it is about 3 times the size of the house I live in currently, dedicated just to lemons, just to give you an idea of how, like, over the top this place was. So that was amazing. And then we went to the Cathedral di Santa Maria de Fiore, which everybody knows it as the Florence Cathedral. This was amazing. These photos do not do this place justice. The cathedral on the inside is a little more, like, Gothic. I don't want to say plain, but it's a little more Gothic than the ones we saw in Vienna. But I mean, just the architecture on the outside of this place was incredible. There's so much going on, and it is such a cool look. And it's massive, too. Like, it looks massive from the outside, and then you get on the inside, and you're like, whoa. So here's some more photos. Some of those are walkways from going up to the dome. But there's a lot of... So this photo and this photo they have a museum underneath it, because it turns out the entire cathedral was built on top of a church that had already existed. So these were the floors, the mosaic floors from that church or basilica that it was built on top of. This was a picture of some of the technology they used to install the dome. This was another photo of the dome. It curves upwards a little more. Canva just had some really funny cropping techniques. And then we also toured the cupola. We bought tickets to go all the way up and get some absolutely amazing views of Florence. And as you guys can see from those views from the top of the dome, that's the thing about Europe that you don't have here in the States, at least, and I don't think anywhere else. It's just the density. Like, everything is so dense, and it looks so different from anything we have over here in America. And it's so dense. The buildings are all so old. Like, we were walking past something in the restaurant we ate at in Vienna the second night. We're looking, we're like, huh, this place has been around since over 200 years before the country we live in existed. That's wild. Just things like that. Like, there is so much history in Europe. And then the dome itself was absolutely amazing. It was stunning artwork. Again, the pictures do not do it justice. But, like, this dome was something else. Really was. I mean, you guys can see the artwork there. But just trying to look at it and process it all, and trying to think how it was painted, too. Like, trying to think how it was painted is incredible, because they probably had to lower someone on a rope to paint it. But just overall, if you're going to Florence, definitely look at this cathedral, and definitely go up into the dome. It's not very expensive, and it was so worth it. We went on a food tour and ended up going out to dinner and grab some drinks with some of the people we met there. That's a story I'm not going to tell. But we went and saw the cathedral at night, it was cool looking. And then the following morning, we went to Piazza Michelangelo, I believe. I believe that's what it's called. But this is some of, like, the best views of the city I have seen. We also got a photo of Ponte Vecchio at night, which was really cool. Just Florence overall, the vibes. I could very easily spend a month and a half here and, never want to leave. I could see myself, like, retiring to this city. It's amazing. We did not have a single bad thing to eat, and I'll get to that in, I believe, the next slide. But, I mean, just, yeah. Overall, just such an amazing city. But, like, the views from this plaza look like something straight out of a painting. It's insane. 'Cause as you guys can see, you have the cathedral, and then you also have, Palazzo Vecchio. You can see Ponte Vecchio in there. Like, it's just overall amazing. It's a great spot to watch the sunset. We never got to that. But something I'd definitely do if I was going to go back would be watch the sunset from this plaza. And then food in Florence. My God. Like, we did not have a bad thing. So just going around the circle here, because I should explain what all of these are. This is essentially nudies, is what they call them. Funny name. But it's essentially gnocchi, just slightly different. This was an authentic Italian pizza. If you notice, there is no sauce on it. Because like real Italian pizzas don't have sauce unless it says with tomatoes. But it was ham and truffle. It was just so good. This was from the first night. This was my main course, which was a steak fillet in truffle sauce. Also just so good. I wish I could taste it for the first time again. My mouth is watering just talking about it. This was the dessert we got, which was like a chocolate torte, I believe. Chocolate raspberry torte, I want to say. Or something of the sort. It was a chocolate raspberry something. And then these were the antipastas we got. Not antipastas, sorry. These were the pasties that we got. So the way meals in Italy work is generally pasta is never a main course. You have antipasties, which are appetizers. Then you have pasties, which are pasta dishes, generally your first course. Or, no, they're called first course, which is generally your pastas. So this one over here is what my dad got. It was like a wild boar ragu pasta. It was amazing. I think this was some kind of lamb pasta dish. So good. And then, again, my main dish was the steak with truffle sauce. This up here, what my webcam is over covering, was the beef carpaccio that my dad got. I had some of that. It was so good. Here was a photo from the first stop on our food tour. The nudies were also from our food tour, but this was like a sparkling white wine was in the drinks, and then this was an authentic like Italian white bread, not the Italian bread that we have over here in America, but like real authentic Italian bread, and then like some goat cheese and something else mixed together on a lettuce leaf, which was also really good. There were so many photos that I had to choose what I thought the best and most unique were, but just food in Florence is amazing. You can never, ever get enough of it. My one regret in Florence is not eating more. Like, we were very good while in Europe. A lot of times I'll skip lunch because I wake up really late. My dad a lot of times only does one meal a day. But we were really good about breakfast, lunch, and dinner while here because the food is amazing. You can never get a bad... Okay, never is strong term. There are some restaurants at like a 1.7 out of 5. But in general, food in Florence is out of this world. So moving on to the last city of the trip, and I know I've been going on for a while now, is Rome. This was the city I expected to like the most, and it was the city I think I liked the least, and I'll explain why as we get through the photos from Rome, but just there is so much history in Rome, and that is so cool. Like, the Colosseum, the Roman ruins, I'll get to photos from those, but, like, those are amazing. What I didn't like about Rome is it is the capital of Italy. Florence there were a lot of people there, but it didn't feel overcrowded. You had space to walk, you had space to breathe. In Rome, it didn't really feel that way. In Rome, everything was so massive, and especially in the summer, It's the same reason as someone who lives pretty close to Washington, D.C., that, like, I never go to D.C. in the summer, is because it's, like, Rome is the Italian D.C. It's all of the big touristy things are always so crowded, and there's just so much to see. Rome is a city I would absolutely go back to as, like, a day trip. As, like, a day trip, maybe weekend, I think I would go crazy if I spent more than 2 days at a time in Rome. We had to get up at, like, 6 a.m. to be able to avoid the crowds. But that being said, the first thing we did when we got to Rome was tour the Vatican and Vatican City. This was absolutely amazing. The photos, again, do not do it justice. We did the Dome tour as well, so we got to see the Vatican from, like, high up. We got to see the Dome as well. We got to see some views from the top of the Dome. So, like, over here is, some of them are Vatican museums, but I believe this is the Sistine Chapel right here. And then this was St. Mark's Square. And then this was the Dome. This is the top of the Dome. There's another photo of St. Mark's Square just from being in it. Or, not St. Mark's Square. I'm thinking Venice. St. Peter's Square. Apologies. Or whatever the square is. I'm blanking on the name. This was a photo of, like, inside the Vatican. It's gorgeous. Everything is mosaic, which just, like, it left me at a loss for words. I did not know what to expect, and I was absolutely blown away. Again, these photos do not do it justice. The next thing we did were the Spanish Steps and the Trevi Fountain, because our hotel was right by there. Spanish Steps actually have nothing to do with Spain, or really anything in Rome, which was kind of disappointing. It was more just like a landmark in Rome. Yeah. It was made famous in, like, an American movie set in Rome. It was kind of disappointing, to be honest. The Trevi Fountain was really, really cool. I remember seeing the copy of it in Vegas, like, 5 years ago at this point. And the real thing is so much better. I included this photo up here, just so you guys could see the level of crowds. We were able to go at, like, 6, 7 in the morning and get really good photos. I have photos in front of it, of me and my dad. But, like, in the end, if you're gonna do, like, sightseeing in Rome, go early. Like, avoid the crowds, go early. But then this is the statue at the bottom of the Spanish Steps. That actually wasn't at the Spanish Steps. That was just another statue we passed. Another thing we did that night is the Church of Sant'Ignazio. I'm probably saying that wrong. Those of you who are on TikTok a lot may recognize this as the Mirror Church in Rome. Essentially, this has become a social media trend where, you have to pay €1 to make the ceiling light up, but once the ceiling does light up, there's a mirror that you can point your phone into and take a picture of the ceiling. I literally just pointed my phone up and got just as good of a picture and saved myself €1. But it is amazing. And a fun thing I saw on TikTok this morning is this dome right here is actually fake. It's painted to look like a dome, but the church does not have a dome. So, fun fact. This was just a little social media find I found. We tried to get seats at a rooftop bar overlooking the Trevi Fountain, but it was so humid, so packed, we decided to just walk around and go elsewhere, because the Trevi Fountain area is such a touristy area, it was like impossible to move. Other tip if you're going to Rome, zipper pockets. Pickpocketing is insane. We didn't get pickpocketed, we did get stolen from, because we bought like 60 or so euros worth of like street paintings. I was collecting some for every city we went to, for my dorm in college, and it got swiped right out from underneath us. We didn't see who did it, but we set it down, took a hand off of it to take our phones out to take a photo of something, looked down, and it wasn't there. So be careful of that. The next morning, we got up really early and walked around Rome. The thing that my webcam is covering up part of, that was, I literally don't know the context of it. That was just on a street corner. This right here is one of the most impressive things. It's a monument to Emmanuel II, who was the leader who freed Italy, I believe. I could get the historical relevance wrong, but this is a monument. This is not a palace. The first thing I thought when I saw it was Caesar's Palace in Vegas. Has the same, like, columns on it. It's just such a massive, massive thing. This was some kind of government building, I believe. This is just a walkway leading up to it, and then this was also a government building, where we ran into some Carabinieri cars, which, fun thing about that, Italy has multiple police forces. They've all been sort of unified to one number, but there's multiple police forces because of their history with, like, Mussolini in World War II. They have multiple police forces all controlled by different people and different branches of government, so that one person can't come in and completely control the police force like that, which is a really cool thing. This had to be one of my favorite stops that we did, which was the Colosseum. I still need to rewatch Gladiator. I haven't watched that movie in about 3 years, and I need to rewatch it now that I've been to Rome and seen the actual Colosseum. But it was amazing. There was so much history, and it was amazing to stand there and to think that, like, this had been around since, you know, like, this was built in the year 80. This is almost 2,000 years old, which was incredible. The photo that my webcam is covering up is a recreation of what the seats would have looked like. They were in marble. To explain a lot of the holes you see, essentially, after the Holy Roman Empire was disbanded, to build, like, St. Peter's Basilica and Vatican City, essentially the Catholics took the stone from the Roman Colosseum and put it over in Vatican City. So that's why all the holes are there. It was a quarry for a while. There's also, like, Rome is just, the Romans were such amazing engineers. They pointed out in the top of the Colosseum, there are holes in the roof because they used to stick wooden, they used to stick wooden rods in those holes, and they'd have a cloth retractable roof. Like, it's a feat of engineering today to build a retractable roof on a football stadium in America. Meanwhile, 2,000 years ago, the Romans figured out how to do it. Like, it's amazing. So, obviously, a lot of the Colosseum has sort of fallen through over the years, but Just to explain this photo, because this is looking out from the floor, the original floor had fallen through, but they had columns underneath it because it was built on top of Nero's palace after the fire. So they had to drain a lake, and they built stuff underneath it, so it was like cages for the animals that the gladiators would fight. And there was a series of like trapdoor elevators so that there was the element of surprise for when the gladiators had to fight. They didn't know where these animals and things that they were fighting were coming from. They also, and gross fact, the floor was sand so that the blood of the animals could soak through and not just pull up. So that was the Colosseum, which was really, really cool. Next up, we have the Roman ruins. Sorry, throat getting kind of dry. I've been talking nonstop for almost an hour now. The Roman ruins were amazing. And I say that, you know, not super lightly. But like Rome, like this is a little bit of the, that's not the Roman Forum. I can't remember what that was. This is a courtyard from one of the ancient palaces. Same here. This is one of the arches, very similar to the one in France. If you guys were watching the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, they went under that. And just very much, you know, trying to find the right words for it. It's very much, it was so cool to look at this. Down here is where the chariot racing happened, and that stadium at its peak could hold 250,000 people. Which is insane to think about. A lot of these places they were setting up for summer concerts because summer in Rome. I believe I have more photos of the Roman ruins. Yeah, I do. This is the Roman Forum. So is this. This is a overhead shot almost of like central Rome with the Roman Forum. You have like the ruins of Caesar's palace. You have a couple like ancient churches and stuff that are no longer standing. This was, and I have more photos of it in the next one, I believe. This photo right here was some ancient Roman brick, and there are some frescoes as well that are just not in that photo because of, again, weird Canva cropping. But there were, you know, original 2,000-year-old Roman brick. Actually, those are those frescoes. This was a little bit of what you could see left of Nero's palace, because again, they built all of this on top of Nero's palace. Here's another shot of just central Rome and the ruins. That's another one of the arches. This is a covered original ancient Roman walkway. These are the original bricks. Same here, there's another photo there. That's another photo of the Roman Forum. And then this was just, again, because with Rome, as you're walking through Rome, you come across ancient ruins. It's part of the reason it's taken them so long to build the subway extender, is because it's ancient Rome. You just, like, you can't make it through there without running into just so much history. It is genuinely insane. So that Like, that was cool. This was also an ancient, the remnants of an ancient, church, I believe. Um, which was, again, really, really cool. Moving on, we also visited the Pantheon, which just also such a cool feat of engineering. I don't have the photo in here, but the dome of the Pantheon is still open at the top because it would have been too heavy for them to close it. So when it rains in Rome, it rains in the Pantheon. And to solve that problem, they just carved holes in the marble floor for drainage. Like, they're not obvious, they're not big enough that anyone's gonna, like, fall through them, but there's holes in the floor for drainage so that it never puddles up. So you have the tomb of a bunch of people here. I can't remember exactly what is what, but the Pantheon was absolutely amazing to see. Just so much insane architecture, and just, yeah. It was awesome to see. It took us about an hour to see everything. We did one of the self-guided audio tours. And yeah, it was amazing. So, moving on, we now have one of my favorite areas, which is Trastevere, I think. The American in me wants to read that Trastevere, but I know that's not right. I believe it's Trastevere. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. But if you guys have ever been to Rome or seen anything about Rome, you'll know this area is, like, a must-go-to. And if I ever go back to Rome, I want to stay in this area. Because it's very much the college kid abroad nightlife. This photo here, I did indeed go dancing in the streets of Rome. I saw so many TikToks about it, and I wanted to make sure I got there. It was a Monday night in Rome, and we just went dancing through the streets. They had a performer. There was a mosh pit. It was something I'll never forget. And, you know, a lot of people say this, but, like, this was a really expensive trip. Like, probably in the, 5 figures. All said and done by the time we paid for food and souvenirs and stuff, and I chipped in a decent amount on this. Like, I'll make that money back. I can work extra hard to make that money back, and that, but I will never be able to experience the memory of being 18 years old, having just graduated high school, on a trip to Europe with my dad, sort of signifying, the end of one chapter and the start of a new one for both of us in our lives, and just dancing through the streets of Rome again. Like, I'll never get that experience again, and the fact that I was able to get that and, be 18 dancing through the streets of Rome, like, I'll never forget that. But the other thing with Rome is you walk a block, you go, oh, cool, that's a monument. You turn the corner, ooh, another monument. Like, Apple Maps, they color code everything. I mean, so does Google. But, like, for Apple, monuments are blue. Like, we literally turned the corner, and it was just a sea of blue. It was insane. So this is a monument we saw at one of the parks. This was a view of the city at night, which was truly, truly amazing. This guy was doing all kinds of tricks. He was doing, like, juggling fire at one point. This church... Okay, fun story about this church. It's the one in the top right that my webcam is covering up. I didn't think about that when I made the presentation. Sorry about that. But this is the thing about Rome. It's that church. We couldn't get into it because we ate dinner and it closed by the time we got there. But that church specifically, it's gorgeous because you have the church on top. You walked into the church, your jaw drops. from what I've read. And then there's a staircase downwards, and there's like an 11th century church. And then below that, there's like an original Roman Empire shrine to one of the Roman gods. Which just, like, you don't get that anywhere else in Italy. There is so much history in Rome, and you can't do it all in a day or 2 days or a week. Like, it would probably take me a year there to do genuinely everything. Because there is so much that we didn't see. I mean, we rode past on, like, electric scooters the circular castle in Rome. We rode past that, but we never actually got to, go in it or tour it or take pictures or anything. But there's so much to do in Rome. And we had a lot of really good food, but apparently I did not take any photos. So guys, thank you all so much for watching. I apologize for how long this video actually is, but I did so much, and I know I couldn't have fit all of this into a couple of 60-second TikToks. If you guys have any questions about my trip to Europe, please, by all means, like, in the comments, ask me. Ask me in the comments. If you guys want another video on one specific thing, let me know. This was sort of just an overview. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Please, please, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.